Hi, everyone. I'm Jan Risher-Dahms, the Vice President of U.S. Development with Join Mayshad. We are an ecosystem of brands for women by women, connecting women to each other and to the companies, causes, and organizations that champion equity for women professionally and personally. Today, you're with us watching our Women in Money show, brought to you each and every Thursday. Please make sure to join us at joinmayshad.com to learn about how you too can become a member as we together revolutionize how professional women connect, engage, and do business together. And make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the bell to receive all of our upcoming notifications. I'm so thrilled and honored to be having this conversation with Suzanne Randolph today. Hi, Suzanne, welcome.
Hi, Jen. It's great to be with you, and thank you so much for the invitation. This is great. I'm looking forward to our time together.
Of course. And, it's so awkward and weird having this conversation with you over a digital technology platform because you're an extrovert, you're a social butterfly, you're a networker, so am I. And usually when we would get together and chat, no matter if it was an event or just even a one-to-one, we'd always be in person. And I loved that about our relationship. And now we're having this on a screen.
I know it's, and I must say, since this virus has hit, it's really so sad not to be able to, sit and have a glass of wine or have a conversation or a meeting in person to work with my staff. To see them virtually is just, it's really upsetting. And it's going to go on for, sadly, longer than we want it to go on. And so, I think that we're each trying to really come up with innovative ways of connecting and feeling and growing those connections. But it's a very challenging time, very, very challenging for us.
It is, Suzanne, and particularly in your space as well. It's a double whammy because you're an art advisor and the president of the Suzanne Randolph Fine Arts, and also the founder of the Amex experience, which is, we'll talk about that, a networking platform connecting women through experiences.
Exactly.
First, let's talk about, from your perspective, how has your art advisory practice evolved in 2020?
Well, it's really interesting. As you know, I've had my art advisory firm for over 25, 30 years, a long time, and really came out of it as part of the not-for-profit art world. And I had friends at the time when we were learning about emerging artists who weren't part of the corporate world. And we thought that they merited to be collected and to be looked at in terms of long-term investments. And that's what we started. There were three of us, and then there were two of us, and now it's me, which has been on my own since 1999. So, it's been a really hard time to be able to really engage with artists, to engage with art, to even walk into the museum even for 5 minutes to really kind of get our fill. But I've been very fortunate with my art advisory firm. I've been working in lots of different sort of areas of interest, really pushing a lot in the area of art in the public realm. And I've been very fortunate since 2020 to really have a couple of major public art commission projects, one of which was sponsored by Governor Cuomo. That is a memorial dedicated to the survivors and people who experienced Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. So that is being commissioned. We did a whole open competition under the auspices of Battery Park City Authority, and that will be dedicated in the spring of next year. So that was sort of something that kind of popped up pre-COVID, but is moving forward. And then there was one project, another public art project that was on pause, and about 3 weeks ago they said it's moving forward. So that will be a link in the Harlem Greenway that kind of is that whole bike path that goes around the island of Manhattan. So things do continue to go forward. Not much in the corporate world, but they do continue to go forward for works in the public realm. And I've been on several teams for new projects that are coming up. But one of the things that I did decide to do, something that I've wanted to do for a long time, is to really focus on the area of fine art appraisal. So I've been doing that, and that is now I'm going to work towards membership of the Appraisal Society of America, which I'm very excited about. And so that's my flexibility. That's sort of my pivot and kind of adding on to what I've done and how I can enhance the experience and also enhance services to clients.
Suzanne, do you think that art in the public space is going to become even more critical and more relevant, particularly because we're not going to museums, we're not going to the office, we're not going to those other indoor spaces where we normally would enjoy art?
Oh, absolutely. It's always been sort of a fabric of New York City. And I was very involved with some of the very early projects creating the art program up at Wave Hill and Riverdale. And you see now, art sort of being dotted all over the city in terms of rotating exhibition programs. So I think it's going to be, I'm sure there'll be more locations that will be identified and more rotating programs that will happen, because that's, bringing it to a larger audience. I know the Met still has their rooftop, and they'll be doing that, and the Whitney has some pieces. So I think it's really going to expand, as it should, ways of kind of bringing different voices and different images and different experience in terms of the way we engage with artwork.
And it feels so awkward to talk about the digital representation of arts as well, but are there ways in which, everything from Zoom to WebEx to Skype have the ways in which we're all now engaging face to face in the digital world? Is that also transforming the appreciation that we may have for art and bringing us new opportunities to be able to experience art? We may not have had those opportunities in the past.
What's really funny, it sort of reminds me of a conversation I had years ago with a guy who was saying, before you know it, you'll be able to learn about art and see art online. And I kept saying, what are you talking about? Stand in front of art, you can't touch it, you can't look at it, you can't really experience it. He said, oh no, it's going to happen, and now it has to happen. And that's really disappointing, because what's better than standing in front of a fabulous painting with great texture, and you can really get close to it and really see and really feel the presence of the artist and how it was created. We've done something which has been kind of fun in this time, is we created SRFA, Suzanne Randolph Fine Arts, in the studio, artists in the studio. And so we've turned to, now probably about 20 plus artists, to have them write statements of how this time has really affected their work. And many of them have created videos. So, which is really great of them working in their studios and how it's all affected them. So we have a YouTube station, channel 2. So you'll see SRFA in the studio, and you can really see what artists have been doing and how it's really affected them. So, I think that's being really great, to go into the studio more and to really talk with them. And that's really our chance to really kind of see them put their hand as they create.
Susan, I would love to know, diving deeper into that. And I think that's so incredibly valuable on so many different levels. Are some of the stories, in the sense of, for the artists that you're collaborating with, are there aha moments that you found to be really very special and meaningful and impactful?
Well, I think, many of them are happy to work on their own, and happy to have the opportunity not to be isolated. Some of them have studio systems that they have not been able to see. So, I think it depends upon the medium. There are some people that have done larger installations where they really need that technical support, but it's been kind of almost their meditative time of really doing that part that an assistant might have done. And others have changed the scale of their work. They haven't been able to get to their studio space because of the limitations of shared studio. So they've been changing the scales. They've been working on smaller paintings, smaller works on paper. But the beauty is that, as an artist, you always have to create. And so there's always wonderful work that is churning up and is being able to share with us in this way.
We talk a lot at Mayshad around, the importance of everyday joys and the importance of everyday pleasure in this crazy moment in time. And much of that is around, how we think about beauty and how we think about nature and how we think about just engaging with something that brings us pleasure and joy. And wondering, for you personally, has COVID transformed how you think about beauty and art in everyday life?
Well, it's interesting. I'm fortunate to have a house outside of New York, which is where I spent the first part of this time. And so the simplest thing was just walking every morning at 7:00 with a friend of mine along the beach. That was really, and then you're looking at really, nature's palette of, the sky is one color of blue one day and very blue and gray. And then another time it has other warmth to it. Sitting with friends at dinner. One friend, we would say, well, let's sort of do our sixes, our social distancing, and have dinner at sunset. So, there's the beauty of colors and hues and discoveries. And there are museums that you can go into, but outside becomes the new works of art. And that's what's really, very special this time. That really we're able to really enjoy and see things in a very different way and take the time, because there is more time, It's our schedules are just so different. I mean, we're not going to an office 9 to 5, 9 to 6, 8 to 6, where we have more flexible in how we spend our days, which is a
So
gift.
true. One of our members said to us recently, she's like, at the end of COVID, will we all ask ourselves, what do we wish we would have taken the time to do during COVID? And it's true because, we're month 7, for some of us 8 into this now, and time goes by very quickly.
Very quickly. It's really funny. I was out of the city for the first 4 months, and I came back to New York because my husband says it's safer for me to be out there than here. I came back to New York, and it felt as if I hadn't been gone for a day, which is really, really crazy. And when I discovered this thing called Take Lessons, for taking French lessons, which I kept saying I was going to do, then I didn't because the days kind of blend in from one blob to another. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing to hold on to, is to really sort of set those things and what would happen if I had more time and what should I have done. And I think we're really at this point now, as we look forward to at least another 6 or 8 months of this, that we really need to do those things that we really have been saying that we're going to do.
Right.
So we're doing it. So I'm going to sign up for my French lessons twice a week.
You've inspired me because it's you keep lists of things, right? And you keep thinking, tomorrow or tomorrow, the next day. But I think that it's a good time. I know now that we're in the heart of fall, to really think about, okay, so what have we accomplished during the first 6 to 7 months? And now that we know, the urgency of finding toilet paper early on and hand sanitizer and stocking up on the right groceries.
Hello. Simple things in life. Exactly. Yeah.
So we're ready for, I think we're launching wave number 3 of COVID in most places in the country, it's crazy to think about. But, I want to talk about, your early interest in art and, what led you to what you're doing now, and what's the passion behind, the reason why you advise in the art space now.
Well, it's really interesting. I mean, there's a great story. My mother had a very dear friend who was the wife of Count Cullen, a famous artist of the Harlem Renaissance. And when they traveled together, they collected art by very, very now important African-American artists. And so she had a granddaughter, because she was married much, much very young. And we were the same age. And so we would spend sometimes weeks doing things in the city in the summer. And she would say, now, girls, it's time to take a nap. And we would take a nap, but in a room that was filled with art. And it was just so wonderful, both for Delaney, Hale Woodruff, Palmer Hayden. And then she and her husband, her then husband, lived in a wonderful brownstone. So all these artists would come for, a wonderful barbecue in the brownstone, the backyard, and the garden. And so, they just became they always kind of triggered my interest. And then I took art lessons, and I went to music and art high school. So it was always sort of part of my life in a very almost kind of cellular way. And so my first job was with the Department of Cultural Affairs for the city of New York, and ran the visual arts program, which was a lot of art in public places, which was really wonderful. And it really just kind of evolved from there. The art world was very small. Soho was just, Soho was Soho. And you really got to know a lot of artists, and they were always kind of eager to experience, create experiences and have their work shown. So it really kind of evolved, over a good part of my life. So, it's been a nice time as I kind of look back on it. And now I'm looking at, growing another dimension of my practice in the field of art appraisals is something that I did. So that was something I did during COVID. I just said, I've been wanting to become certified as an appraiser and these standards. And I took the class, passed the test. And so now I'm going to be applying for membership. So that's exciting. So that's something that I had on my list for about 3 years. So I made it happen. But art has always been part of my life. And I'm really very delighted that I've continued to be involved with so many interesting projects over the course of decades, really.
Suzanne, it's interesting because I think that we often think about art as something that we hang on our walls, but we often don't think about art as an investment. And, as we're thinking about, particularly in 2020, particularly with the market swings up and down, and really trying to figure out what to do with everything from our 401k to how we could diversify our portfolio a bit more, how do we become art investors, and what tips do you have for those people who haven't yet stuck their toe in the art pool water?
Well, I have a real thing of saying that art has to be enjoyed. And, if you start thinking about it as an investment opportunity, you're doing it for the wrong reason.
Mm.
So I really have a hard time with people and clients that will say, well, is it going to be worth something? What's it going to be worth? And I can't, I have done some very simple valuations for private clients, back and forth. And you kind of, you review things with them every, let's say, 3 or 4 years. They're moving or doing something. And you say, oh my gosh, you look back, and yes, it did very well. And then the market changes. I mean, it's an explosive market. It's global. So the trends and the interests are always shifting. And so you have to buy what you really love that will give you joy every day. Otherwise, that's the investment. Investment's in yourself and your own pleasure. And it's not really, to me, to be in the market. I mean, if I think about what I could have bought, for $1,000, as a Jean-Michel Basquiat for $2,000, yeah, that would be great, But the truth of the matter is that you really have to love it. And that's what I would say to everybody. That's a real pleasure gift. And you think about people who've been collectors who bought early Picassos. I mean, to live with a wonderful pink Picasso, rose period Picasso. I mean, can you imagine being able to have that access to it? And that's the pleasure of it. No one's thinking investment. They were thinking about what pleasure it brought to them.
I love what you said around it's, viewing art as an investment in yourself. And I think that that's something that for women anyway, at least as well, sometimes that's hard for us to think about, like, how do we invest in ourselves? Because we're always investing in so many other people. We're investing in our children, in our family, for our families, for our communities through nonprofit giving, but often not making that investment in yourself.
Yeah. I mean, those are the real wonderful little gifts of life, I think, so do what you love. I mean, and then that pleasure has no price tag to it. But that's what it's really about. And certainly in these times, we're really resetting priorities as things shift at any age because of what we're confronting right now, the fragility of it all.
Exactly. Suzanne, you've had some really diverse clients. I'm going to read just a few of them. So I love this is just a small sampling of who you've worked with, but Tiffany and Company, NYU Langone Medical Center, Amex, Avon, Gracie Mansion Conservatory, the MTA, which here in New York is our public transportation system. Do you find, is there a common thread or theme amongst your clients that come to you to seek your services? What drives them to want to make that investment?
Well, I think for the projects in the public realm, like MTA, so I really was, before I worked with them before there was an art and transit program, and did a lot of major projects that you'll see, like the Royal Liechtenstein in Times Square was one that I did, Herald Square subway station. So, a lot of them that I did, which is really wonderful. So I think that for the public realm projects, it's really, understanding and establishing a process of selection. And that was really the key that I was very pivotal in creating and formalizing. So that's somebody who understands the process, that really addresses the issue around stakeholders that are very diversified, community engagement, who's on the panel, who's representative of an art selection panel, how do you reach the artist? So that on that part is process. And then I think for the corporate side, I think it has been partially process, but also really doing beautiful work of quality, not again for investment purposes, but really creating a nice environment in which people can really kind of enhance and enjoy being in their spaces they work day to day, But of course, again, and then also working with an archive of materials, because for Tiffany, we worked with their wonderful, beautiful archive of drawings, original drawings, and things that were just so special to have access to replicate these images throughout their new headquarters when they moved to Fifth Avenue and 23rd Street. So that was really great. But my favorite project, I know you're going to want to know, which I love the project I did for American Express, which is the memorial to their 11 travel advisors that died in September. And that was just, it just gives me chills to think about it. It was such a wonderful experience. And we did the process again of commissioning artists and getting proposals, and that whole process. Worked with their senior management at Amex. And as they said, every time we had a meeting, that part of this thinking about how to memorialize their employees was also a healing process for them. So it's a wonderful piece that was done. It turned out by a landscape architect who I had invited to really work with the other artists to enhance the final work of art, because the location is in a 3-story high marble floored cold lobby. And it was really incredible. The solution is wonderful. It's a beautiful fountain that has a 11-sided carved quartz crystal that is suspended from the ceiling. And it's magical. It's there on permanent display, and it's another peaceful moment in the city to go and reflect. And so that's my favorite project. But, you're always working with different artists. You're always working with wonderful clients. And the most important thing is that people love the art and live with it, how much it enhances their workspace and their daily experience is what I really care about.
That art, that piece that you talk about, the Amex piece, is beautiful, Suzanne.
It's
breathtaking.
It's so beautiful. It's called 11 Tears, and it's just a magical piece. Ken Smith is the landscape architect who did it, and we had 8 other artists who were well established. And Ken said, may I submit a proposal? I said, absolutely. And when the proposals were delivered to my office, when his came in, my assistant at the time looked at each other and we said, that's it. And we just knew it, because it's, and you just know it.
Yeah.
And it was really, really magical and special. And so there was a lot to get it right in terms of finding the quartz crystal that came from Brazil and all these other things. It was wonderful, but it's a magical piece. And it really did what it was supposed to do, was to honor the people that lost their lives, and then to also heal them, their memory, and the people that work for them and their families.
And with the medium that was used, the quartz is so healing, has such incredible healing properties in and of itself. It was such a brilliant choice.
Yeah, and it was carved. It's interesting for a whole bunch of reasons. I had met this man who imported crystals for a sort of side project that I wanted to explore personally. And so I called Harvey and I said, this is what's needed. And he found the piece, as I said, in Brazil. And then he said, there's only one person in the country that can carve it. And it was sent to Northern California, with a wonderful kind of, person who was sort of in that other kind of world of spiritual world. And he carved it in 11 sides. And what we also did is, with the remaining pieces, the things that were carved away, he did small 11-sided crystals that he carved, so that each family member got 2 crystals. And then, of course, for senior management, we did that too. But it was just, the whole experience it had a whole other energy that was around it, in terms of how we found it, how we sourced it, who did the work, how it was distributed, and people still have these things as memories of the ones that they lost, and the loved ones whose lives were taken. So it had lots of different dimensions that were very magical.
Suzanne, for those of us who aren't in Manhattan, how can we see that? It's on your website, right?
It's on my website, on the American Express global headquarters in Battery Park City. And if you're driving, even going down West Street, I guess, it's on the right-hand side. You can walk into the building, and it's right there to the left as you enter the space. It's there. And it's very quiet and peaceful. And the 11 tears drip into this 11-sided fountain, very shallow, and create these pools, these drops of water, that rings that connect with each other. And it's very special. So I was very honored to have been selected to do that process for them. And it's a highlight of what I've done as an art advisor.
Suzanne, let's talk a bit more about art and design and how that can be used to activate and reinforce just the healing impulse. And as we think about, what COVID's meant to us individually and collectively in 2020, there's a lot of healing that's happening, both physical, but then also mental and spiritual as well. And how have you used art and design in the past, and what can we learn going forward?
Well, it's really interesting because of what I did with the American Express project. I've also worked with a client in Washington and came across some artists that did kinetic work. And had wanted to work with a client to create these beautiful immersive environments. And after I was in graduate school, I even created a whole concept called Sensu, which are these immersive environments that were created by artists. And it really is that blend of art and design where you can really kind of immerse yourself into it. And I think that we need that more and more. And if it can happen virtually, great. And when we can really create it, I think it's sort of like Interscape, which is a immersive thing where you can create these projected images. But I think that's sort of an interesting way of kind of merging both art and design that really can heal. And I think that through colors, through moving images, through creating nature, immersing yourself in nature, we're doing, which we'll get to, an event that's really about forest bathing for my other part of my life, which you'll ask me about. But anyway, but I think art and design is a way of really doing something. In fact, one of the projects we did that was created by an artist in Hunters Point in Queens has that wonderful effect. It's 7 phases of the moon. The artist's name is Nobu Nagasaki, and she created these beautiful spheres that are embedded, that are laid out in the ground in circular form. It's right on the water's edge in Queens, and it does just that. It does that healing. It's a wonderful, quiet place to go, and I think that going in that direction and bringing those into the public realm is really something that we will continue to do more of.
Suzanne, this is a perfect segue into the second part of your life. And when I think of you, I think of the most exquisite experiences and how you connect people to places, people, and things. And you launched a company called the Amex Experience. Talk to us a bit about your passion behind that, and what need did you see in the market at the time, and honestly, how has that need evolved?
Well, it's being an art advisor, I travel a lot internationally to keep up with art. Going to the Biennale, going to Munster, going to Documenta, and going to Fiat, and just going to different places to keep up with contemporary art. And I traveled by myself, and I found at the end of each day that I had no one to eat with. I wanted to talk to somebody about what I had seen and have sort of that wonderful exchange of how was your day, how was my day, let me tell you about it. And after a trip in Paris, I was dining in a restaurant in an area that I had not known before, because I would have to eat out by myself, and many times I would sort of walk into a place and say, well, this doesn't feel right, and walk out. In other places, I would sit in a place and have a wonderful time and be sort of the center of attention as a solo woman diner. But on one trip to Paris, I had a really horrible experience, and my French was good enough that I could say to the young women who would check my coat that it was the worst experience I had ever had. And they, of course, were really upset, as I was, where, the waiter would just drop silverware in passing. I had to wait many minutes to order a glass of wine. And I realized that there was really not a resource of where women could dine on their own. And so that sort of started the whole thing about where can you dine as a solo diner in European cities. And that was sort of the thing that sort of started started Amex. But as I talked with more women, there were more services they wanted. They wanted concierge services. They wanted to be able to meet other people through different experiences. And so that really, it kind of grew through conversation. We did create an app called the Amex for One of Where to Dine, a solo diner in different cities, London, Paris, New York, and San Francisco. And then we started to do trips. But it was really about bringing women together. And in New York and in London, we did experiences that brought women together. We would do tours of art fairs in Paris through local guides. And then last year, I started doing trips, which I'm very excited about and I absolutely love. And we did 2 trips to France, and I was planning on doing, in fact, someone called me today from Sèvres, the porcelain factory in Paris. And they said, we have you down for coming to do a visit on the 20th of October, which is today. Sorry, I'm not going to make it because I'm not allowed out of the country. So anyway, so doing these wonderful trips is something that I really, really want. to build up and to really continue to grow a global network of women, so that they can come from other parts of the world and meet us, meet our group. And limited to small groups, no more than 8, very high end, and focused around culture and cuisine. So, so this week, so what we're doing now that we're in New York, we're doing more virtual trips, virtual experiences. So we have 2 experiences around feng shui, the office, and then your work, your home office and the bedroom. And then we have one that an artist that I've known who is French, who does a wonderful workshop. She does all over the world on paper cutting. Mm-hmm. We'll do one on floral design with the Flower School in New York, where you'll get flowers to your home from Holland. And then you'll have an instructor will show you, you'll get a vase, and you'll have enough flowers to make 3 arrangements. So you'll have the tape of doing how to make a flower arrangement, which is great. And then we're doing one that's going to be forest bathing, which actually came out of a friend of mine who used to sell insurance, art insurance, for some of the big places like AXA and Marsh McLennan. And so we're doing that in Central Park. So, and then we're doing origami. So we're doing these virtual experiences so that women can come together, see each other. We've done some wine tastings. We've done some pieces in Italy. So that's what I'm going to continue to do, and to create these itineraries so that some of these trips can be real.
Suzanne, so I can't help but think of all of the times I've eaten alone as a solo diner, as I used to travel quite a bit as well. And It can be a horrifying experience on so many different levels, from the way in which you're perceived by others when you enter into a restaurant, to where you're seated, to the amount of time that your experience can go by before anyone pays attention to you, right? And so it is very disheartening. And I think particularly for women who are looking to use a dining experience as a part of their overall appreciation of whatever city or culture that they're in. What in the feedback that you've received from women in your network, what have been some of their biggest aha moments by being a part of what you've created for them?
Well, I think, there were women that would only order room service because they didn't know where to go. And so I think having the app and using it was really, because most of them, I would say 99% of the things that are on our app are reviews that I actually did myself. So I would sit and live it, and I was very concerned about the neighborhoods that we would dine in. And when I was seated at one restaurant in Paris, I started talking to another woman who was sitting a couple of seats away from me, and we were talking, and I said, well, where have you eaten? And she told me, and I said, you went there by yourself? And she said, funny you should say that, because once I left, I walked out of the restaurant in the evening, and there was a man who was asking me for money. And I ran into the metro, and I said, exactly, because that's really the key. There are lots of great places to dine anywhere in the world, but you really also have to know where to dine so that you can feel safe going and coming. And so that was something that I think that women really appreciated. And the kind of energy, some places are very formal, and you're up for formal, and goodness knows, I've certainly dined in very, very formal restaurants. And then others, where you're sitting, if you're sitting at the bar, does it have a wonderful, wonderful bar? Or is it kind of a place where it's more guys at the bar and you don't want to be there? Right. So it's really that kind of evaluation that is really, really key. And so that's what I cared about. We did a whole survey, a whole little checkoff list, which included, where is the restroom? Simple things like that. Is it clean? So
that is so important.
And you don't even think about it, but I had a friend who used to work for a restaurant owner, and she gave me this 25-page checklist in which she was hired to go and check off how to arrive early, how were you greeted, the whole thing. And I incorporated that into our short list that we use for evaluating restaurants. So I had my staff at the time go, and I had them fill out stuff. And so that's what we did, so that all those little things were considered. Where's the restaurant? What's it like outside? Is it clean? Is the restaurant clean? Lots of things that you really care about to feel comfortable and to engage and to have, of course, really good food. So that those times are really memorable, that you can kind of cherish them and put them write them in the app, keep track of your notes to build your own repertoire up and to exchange and to share them with others.
Suzanne, from my perspective and hearing you describe describe the experiences from your members, you're helping women feel safe, confident, and secure in how they think about a pleasurable dining experience. And so much of that now also pertains to helping us feel safe, confident, and secure as we start to dine out again during COVID, right? And I would imagine that will be a focal point at some point for you as well, in the sense of, for women, as we start to travel again and start to get out of our comfort zones, and, even more so now than ever, we'll want to feel even safer in how we think about, what our table is 6 feet apart from each other. Do they do outdoor dining to the extent that they should, et cetera, et cetera.
It's going to be a whole other set of criteria that will have to be set. And I think, quite honestly, it is all one's personal comfort zone. I have friends who will not eat outside. They just won't. They certainly won't eat inside, but at this point. But even eating out of their own homes is really still a challenge for them. And so, I have found that I will go and visit with a friend and we'll social distance and have a glass of wine. We have eaten a couple of times in the city outdoors, but that's all going to change. I mean, a friend of mine said, she says, I've got this very long fur coat and I haven't worn it in about 10 years. And I'm going to pull it out and sit outside and wrap myself in November, December, and January, February, March until it gets warm again. And so there's so many things we have to think about because the days are getting shorter, so as we started COVID before, at least the days were longer and you didn't feel at 8:00 as if you were kind of really boxed in, but now the reverse is going to happen. So there are going to be lots of emotional challenges as we move forward and we figure out how comfortable we feel with sharing it with our people who are in our book, but the walks are great. And I think it really depends upon just place by place. But you see them building things. I don't know. I think it's a real personal comfort level, very personal comfort level, that we can talk about what they're doing, but it's your choice. It can't be a blanket thing about this wonderful environment, this wonderful food.
Right, right.
It's really everyone's individual comfort level.
Right, right. Yes, and I absolutely agree. And I think it's, we're all going through this in very different ways and very different waves as well. And so, many of the women in our network had COVID or had family members with COVID or knew people who died, with COVID early on. And now we're seeing kind of the ripple effects of that as it transfers to other states across the country as well. Understanding that, I think, based upon the way it's impacted us professionally or personally, that also determines the extent to which we're willing to, kind of get back out there and to also understand what other underlying health conditions we may also have that may, prohibit some of that mobility as well.
Yeah. I mean, I the one thing that I do wish is that there was a way of getting back into a co-working space safely. I've been working at home and it's really a challenge. And that's what I really miss in terms of just the day-to-day as a professional working, not to be able to sort of have that other site and environment in which to really kind of think independently of what else has to be done in my home office. So, it's going to take a huge adjustment. And these next 6 months couldn't go by fast enough for me. They just can't go by fast enough. O'clock at 5:00, it's just not going to make it.
Suzanne, I want to talk a bit about pivoting in one's career and reinvention, because these are themes that come up a lot for us as we talk about not just 2020, but just even, staying fresh and relevant and current, given, our day-by-day heavy reliance on all things related to technology and just the speed by which our world is changing so dramatically, particularly in 2020. And we know that speed of change is probably going to continue for quite some time. And so, coupled with the fact of so many millions of Americans that were either furloughed or unemployed, how do we as professional women really think through in what way do we pivot or reinvent or refresh our own brands to stay fresh and relevant and current? And wanted to get your thoughts and feedback on that theme.
Well, I think, part of it, I think that we all have to do, and we are doing, whether we want to admit it or not, or do it subconsciously or consciously, is that we're really thinking about what we're really passionate about. What do we really care about? What really in these days, as we look forward, that can have all sorts of shifts in a second. What do we really care about? What are we passionate about? And I realized that for myself, I really love the whole idea of travel and want to see other places. And so I want to put together some virtual trips for Alex and meet and have conversations with other people. And then for my art advisory firm, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, I really took this certification for appraisal services. And so that for me with two clients in hand now is wonderful because I can research, I can do it, just being on my computer. I do have to go and look at things and get documentation of things in very, very select manner, but it's a whole other way of really expanding my career and interest and learning more, researching more, and helping people come up with new valuations. So it's another way of engaging, which is not about buying the art, framing it, and installing it, but it's really the other side of it, which I'm very excited and really think it's something that I can do for decades to come, quite honestly. So that I'm excited about. So that's my big pivot for the art advisory part. And then I do want to continue to do these wonderful trips. I just love the trips that I put together. And that's I'm just going to be dreaming. I want to do something to Oslo. A friend of mine has a great gallery. There's wonderful architecture there. I want to do one about Aubrey Beardsley, about Art Nouveau in France. And it just things like that as these exhibitions, and that's sort of the pivot. So it becomes really a blend for me of both parts of my life, with art being the focal point and how that can sort of segue to bringing women together as we explore and share experiences, and then on the other side of servicing clients around art. So that's it's not really so much of a pivot. I get maybe sort of giving another depth to the experiences and to the knowledge is what I'm really looking to do. So it's really more focused a little bit, but really kind of adding skills and adding a different perspective in terms of enhancing interest and experiences.
I really appreciate what you said around following your passion, because I think that, I think that as women, we have a tendency to become very good at something, and that really then becomes reflective of our resume trajectory over time. And then we get boxed into what that definition is, right?
Exactly.
And sometimes, people think of us as one thing, whereas for us internally, we internalize ourselves and our accomplishments as something very, very different.
Yeah.
And we find in our conversations with women in Mayshad, like, we're using this moment in time to really think through exactly what you said, like really, truly, not just necessarily what am I good at, but what do I really feel something for? Exactly. And that really ties back also to how I think about, the work that you do in the art space as well, because you're helping people feel something different, right? You're helping them to connect with a different medium.
Yeah. It's, I must say, one can always be self-critical and say, oh, I didn't do this, I wish I had done that. But, when I think about it, it's been very satisfying to sort of now blend these two interests and to be able to be really a connector, as you know all too well with what you've done, how satisfying it is. And the new people that you meet, it makes the world bigger and smaller in terms of the way that you really can to it's more people to meet and more intimate and satisfying experiences as you come together and share ideas and experiences. So it's nice. It's really great.
It's so interesting you say bigger yet smaller, because that's really what COVID's doing for all of us, right? It's taking what the global world is, enabling us to connect much more globally because of all the technology platforms that we're much more accustomed to than what we were pre-COVID. But then it's also bringing us a different appreciation for what's right next door to us, what's in our back door, right? Really, what's in our town, in our city, in our own community. And taking those moments and times to really feel more connected with people that are just geographically closer to us.
Right. It's really funny. Tomorrow I'm taking a walk with a family friend to show him the neighborhood that I grew up in. We're just going to do this wonderful walk in Hamilton Heights, and it's really wonderful. I mean, I haven't walked there in years, but we'll walk and talk and find a nice place to have lunch. And, so it really is, it's an interesting, challenging, and a wonderful new opportunity to sort of rethink how we want to spend these days and months and years.
Exactly. Suzanne, you mentioned that you were at your home outside of the city, and now you're back in Manhattan. When you came back to Manhattan, you said you felt like you hadn't been gone a day. Talk to us a bit about, just from an aesthetic perspective. Now, how do you have a different sort of appreciation for Manhattan?
Well, I don't know if I do. I mean, because I have not I've only been in my car driving. I do not get on public transportation. I do walk in the park, not as often as I should, but I do. So, and I find it, I'm always finding something that's gone. In terms of something that's closed, or and so that's hard. That's really, really hard. And you can see blocks that have no life in them, and so that's very, very difficult. When I'm in the country, I'm focusing on nature and being in a beautiful space. And I'm really working hard to find beauty in the city. But in terms of that kind of wonderful street life, walking past people, it's hard. It's really, really hard. And and the other thing is everyone is responsible for you are. So there's that level of concern that kind of covers as you say, how long will I stay in Fairway? How long will I go to the farmer's market? And people standing online, or how long will I go to the bank? Little things, but for the most part, where I have been going, it's really a reminder of the impact, the economic impact of this time, and it's sad. It's really, really sad to see. I mean, New York will certainly come back. There's no doubt in my mind about that. But in the meantime, we're all coping and doing the best that we can to stay safe, and keep friends around us and family members around us safe. So, I'm happy to be in the park and look at the trees starting to turn, and that's a real gift to be able to walk and to do errands. But it's a challenge.
I think it's going to be fascinating to see what comes from the ashes of this time. And when we think about, and this is apples and oranges comparison, when we think about 2007, 2008, and the whole sharing economy that sprung from that after that time period.
Yeah.
And how many women, either by force or by choice because they were laid off from their jobs, like actually, reinvented and launched their own businesses, right? I think that now we're in something that's much more obviously sizable and massive and material. Absolutely. But I do think it'll be interesting to see, to your point around, and I've been in the city a few times, but just walking down the streets and seeing, blocks and blocks of empty storefronts, like what will become of that space? And is there a way where, do we really need all of that retail to begin with, right? Because that's largely what it was. And so maybe this is an opportunity to create something that's of more value to us as human beings rather than to our pocketbooks or to our shopping habits or to whatever the different level of consumerism was in the past.
Well, I think what friends have told me, and I haven't ventured out as much, is that the smaller neighborhoods have their same kind of pulse. I know neighborhoods in Brooklyn still have their same kind of pulse. I haven't driven or been. I've been to the West Village to get my coffee, but I think the smaller neighborhoods have their pulse, and I think that in terms of what goes on in Midtown, that's going to be the big change. Because you really need that. You want to support these small merchants to keep them open. They're people that you've known for decades. How are you doing? I mean, our pharmacist is a wonderful man. And how are you doing? And those are the people you care about. So I think the neighborhoods, the small neighborhoods, are going to be okay with time, but it's going to be kind of the bigger midtown, downtown areas that are going to be interesting to see what those larger footprints or how they're going to reconfigure themselves.
And I think that's true. And absolutely agree with you. And I think it's true for no matter what metropolitan city we may be in, right? Because we're going to see kind of a shifting and a reallocating of how we think about how we spend our time and how we spend our money as well.
Exactly. Yeah. But I'm happy. I mean, I never thought I would be happy shopping online. I never thought I was, but I mean, I do drop in, to a couple of Upper West Side stores, nothing in Midtown, just sort of drive by and it's just so desolate. Yeah, just so desolate. It is a time, but New York will come back for sure.
Absolutely. And I think in the short term, it's definitely refining, what we hold near and dear to our hearts and how we, going back to the beginning of our conversation, how do we really appreciate joy and beauty during this time period and finding those different everyday pleasures that bring us joy and really being more present and real in those experiences too, because I think that's a big part of, hopefully we don't have as many distractions. And so we're able to actually, when we are experiencing art, to be able to fully appreciate it without all the other sort of bells and whistles going around us.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is that we won't feel as overwhelmed being in the city. The city, the energy of it can be very overwhelming, and I think that sort of tamping it down a bit will make us be able to see more and enjoy more with greater depth.
I agree. Suzanne, thank you so much. How do we stay in contact with you for the viewers out there today?
Oh, you can go to Suzanne Randolph Fine Arts, and you can go to the Amex experience and sort of see what we're doing.
Suzanne, thank you so much. Can't wait to continue our conversation.
Yes, absolutely. And thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for watching us today. I'm Jan Mershadams, the Vice President of U.S. Development with Join Mayshad. Please make sure, again, to check us out at joinmayshad.com, become a member, join the sisterhood. We can't wait to have you on board. And please make sure, if you liked what you saw today, leave a comment and like our video. Thanks so much, everyone. See you soon. Have a great afternoon. Hi, everyone. Please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to hit the bell to receive notifications of all of our upcoming content. Thanks, everyone. See you soon. Have a great day.